I'd like to start with, kia ora tātou, ko koiroa te maunga, ko tirohanga te awa, no kawakawa ahau. No Lumkong toku whānau, no Cookson toku whānau. Ko Richard toku mātua, ko Nairi toku whaia. Ko Stella me kei tapu tamariki. Ko Joe toku ingoa. So my roots and my heart lie in the Bay of Islands. I was born and raised on the family farm in Kawakawa. This has been the place that's been my home to my whānau for 5 generations. My great-grandparents made camp with their 13 children by the Waimea River before settling higher up on the Ruapekapeka Road, on the ridge above the Waimea Valley and below the Ruapekapeka Pa. I find my spiritual home in nature. This is where I find peace, a sense of connection and grace. My maunga koiroa is my visual anchor. It sits close to Ruapekapeka Pa, the bat's nest, which has recently received PGF funding, so that's quite close to my heart. This is the site of the last of the Flagstaff Wars. I see Koroa from the water in the Bay of Islands, from the hills above Kerikeri, from the Pakaraka Plateau, and from Hukurunui as our approach from the south. Standing on my maunga, I find perspective, hope and clarity. My awa finds its way from the northeast slopes of Koiroa, winding its way through the land my family settled, to join with the Waimea, Otiria and Kawakawa rivers. Flying on to Opua and the Bay of Islands beyond, in my river I find guidance and resilience, a reminder of how I like to be in this world. This is a path of flow, of ease and acceptance, which aligns with persistence to carve and shape my world. It is also how I find my way to my maunga, my higher perspective. So,
beautiful.
From there I want to speak a little bit about my journey into Vision Kerikeri. It actually started with a phone call from this man, Rod Brown, many years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. I think it's the beginning of the Wīroa Stream Trail, 7 years ago. And so I happen to be one of the property owners that back up to the Wīroa Stream. And supposedly, as the story goes from Rod's perspective, I was one of the few voices in favour or excited about the opportunity that presented itself and the work that the mahi that was intended by Vision Kerikeri and the dock nursery and the people that have been involved. So it's interesting, from there Vision Kerikeri was on my radar after that conversation, so I saw an announcement for a community meeting, one of these, AGM for Vision KK, and I showed up, and I think I must have stood up and happened to say something pertinent, and this is where you end up. So, so anyway, so the Wīroa Stream project was, I suppose, that first point of connection for me. And looking at that project that has been going on 7 years now, it's a $300,000 project to date. There's 7,700 voluntary hours of labour that have gone into it. Council is now quite an asset with less than a 5% investment. So they've been working with Kerikeri High School, Kerikeri Primary School, planting trees. There's a new track that's been formed from the primary school down to the river itself to give opportunity for EOTC, so education outside the classroom. 17 planting sites, 17,600 plants in the ground in the last 7 years. Boardwalks, bucket brigades, bridges, they're up to all sorts of things, trying to keep people out of the mud, trapping program going on, 3 historical informative signs, and a signed management agreement with council. So it's a very holistic project, there's lots going on, and I'd just like to give a big congratulations to Rod Brown for the efforts that he's made. And the plan for Wīroa Stream, which there are many.
Cool.
So from there, I wanted to talk about where the track's going from now. Right now, they're pushed through to the back of Semery Place. It's heading towards the end of Mill Lane, hoping to hook up there. And into the future, there's potential to join up with Hall Road. So with that in mind, I wanted to speak about traffic, congestion, connectivity in town. We've had some coordinated groups between our Kerikeri, which Anika will speak to shortly, and Vision Kerikeri. We've managed to access GIS maps through council which show covenant easement reserve land which gives community access to different places, and from there we've been trying to create an overlay of what a multimodal transportation system might look like for Kerikeri, in the hopes of creating wellbeing through health benefit, walking and cycling, reducing congestion. If you have a walking trail or a cycle trail which takes the same amount of time or less to get yourself from flat A to B, will you still jump in your car and drive? Our thinking is that maybe not. So it's another angle apart from infrastructure and roading assets and capital works that we could use to maybe reduce the congestion and create connection. We have come across a few issues with funding. So the council's been working on an integrated transportation plan. We've come across the fact over and over again that there's a perception about Kerikeri that Kerikeri receives more than it deserves. This in reality is not a fact. Kerikeri holds the majority of our ratepayer revenue, or it comes from this area, and at the same time we are coming up against this perception. And in my mind, perception should not be leading the way in terms of the creation of strategies, but this is the way it is and has been for a while. I mean, growing up in Kawakawa, I was aware of the perception from the other side of the fence. As a child, Kerikeri was always seen as an affluent bubble. It was almost like there was Northland and Kerikeri in isolation, and I see that perception there to this day. I think we need to start working towards the breaking down of those barriers. I think one of the crucial things that we need to be doing is making our iwi, our Ngāti Rehia, more visible in our community. Recently, PGF funding has given money towards a project, Te Ha o Te O, the Breath of the World, a sculpture out of the Kerikeri roundabout. It's created some angst among certain portions of the population. Vision Kerikeri is in complete support. There's something I'd like to read to you. This is written by a young man with a young family. He's a foreigner, and as someone who's lived in a foreign country for years, I think sometimes as a foreigner you have a slightly different perspective. You're not quite as embedded, and so you tend to take more of a bird's eye view. There's not so much bias that comes into play. And so this is what he wrote in response to why he thought, or one of the conversations that have been missing, especially in social media, around Te Ha o Te O. He says, below is just my personal viewpoints, but believe this has been missing in some of the conversations with the opposition. Ngāti Rehia is recognised tangata whenua, ahika, kaitiaki of the rohi that we live in. So that in itself gives them certain rights. The sculpture is not about creating an identity for Kerikeri, and for me personally it does not require wide community support. This is a project envisioned by local hapu who have been fighting for years to find a spot for their vision of a sculpture that tells a story and reignite a much needed discussion. Many of the iwi and hapu lives in coastal settlements in Northland. So this is not only about a sculpture, but actually about the survival of coastal settlements. We don't start combating climate change, these settlements will disappear. Chris Booth and his family have given so much back to the community, including donating land near Kororiko Park. So this, I believe, is also about acknowledging him and his family's contribution to the rohi. The question really should be, why has our local hapu found it so difficult to borrow a piece of land on a prominent location, considering the Treaty of Waitangi and our commitments to make right what was wrongfully taken? So those are his words, and I have to say that I agree completely with what he said. So that's just putting another angle on the conversation, and I'm sure there may be more that comes up in question and answer, because I know there are those who are in opposition. From there, I wanted to speak more about Ngāti Rehia becoming visible. We've got Tūhono 200 last year. Unfortunately, Tūhono 200 is a celebration of 200 years of the meeting of two cultures. This is the first place that Māori and European cohabitated on this piece of land where we are today. So unfortunately, the way COVID-19 rolled out, limitations and lockdown happened the weekend of the festival. So the only project that actually managed to take hold and occur was a project that had worked through with school children, painting of rocks and ephemeral art that was placed up and down the river here, and that was the night before lockdown. So by the Saturday, the day of the festival, we weren't able to complete the process, and the festival was fallen by the wayside. But the motto of Tūhono 200, standing together, weaving our future, still remains. And so I think from here on out, what we need to look closely at is how we can start weaving in those cultural elements and make that more of a visible thing, the way we design and the way we create spaces and places and systems within our region and within Kerikeri itself. There's a lot to learn from Te Ao Māori and whakapapa. I'm a designer by trade. I have a deep connection to the land, as you probably gathered from my pepeha. And for me, I see, and I've seen this over and over again, how landscape and places and environments infiltrate people, infiltrate communities in the way they work, and infiltrate individuals and how they react and how they are together and as individuals themselves. And so I think it's very important that we remember this when we put our time and our energy and our finances and our resources into any given project. What we build and what we create has a long-term effect. So it's thinking with longevity, it's being thoughtful in everything that we do. It's not about, this is why I think I have a little trouble with the way PGF is rolled out. It's put such time constraints on the spend of this money that has created less space to think and plan and allow things to evolve alongside community. And it's something I'm doing my best to combat, or to, what's the word? Starts with D. Sorry, forgive me. Facilitate, that's a good one. No, this is disruption. I'm talking about disruption. So it's disruption of the system. One of the other things that we've been involved with this year with Vision Kerikeri has been a submission process with Arvida. It's a large corporate entity that's moved into the Kerikeri area, has bought a piece of land at the end of Hall Road. So alongside the Hall Road residents, we've been submitting, and I attended my first submission hearing last week. I think it was last week. I was pretty appalled at the way it rolls out. I mean, you've got a huge corporate body with a lot of financial backing, presenting expertise, but you can understand when you have expertise that's being paid by a corporate body, there's a degree of bias in the information that's being presented. And then you have community showing up who have on the ground knowledge, local knowledge. They know the environment, they know the people, they know the way these rivers flood, the way the waters move, what runoff does. We've just been through the situation where we've had a severe drought in Northland, and we treat stormwater as another problem. So, the fact that there's no obligation to capture that water for storage in this sort of environment, so therefore combating the drought, I mean, instead of having two problems, one in each hand, we can solve those problems by connecting those dots. So it's all about connecting those dots and making sense of all this. But the way that system works right now, the local voice is not able to be heard. So the other thing I wanted to thank you for are your membership fees, because with your membership fees this year we will be putting resources towards submissions around the district plan. And the district plan is a really important document because it is a blueprint for the way our community is created. So some of the things that we'll be looking at are to do with stormwater and detention and the use of stormwater for drinking. So seeing if we can work into that district plan a sensible way of dealing with these things. We'll be looking at connectivity. When I spoke about the way environments affect people, or the way